Hi, everyone. I am so grateful to be here with all of you. As was said earlier, my name is Hunter Steinitz. I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was born with Harlequin ichthyosis. So, as you heard a little bit about earlier, ichthyosis is kind of an umbrella term for a family of genetic skin disorders. Um, my particular type is the rarest of its kind of subfamily. I was born in 1994. I was 5 weeks early. And when I was born, I was born in I did not have a collodion membrane. I was a little unusual in that regard. Many folks born with ichthyosis are born with kind of a saran wrap like shell called a collodion membrane. I had a similar shell, but it was thicker and it wasn't quite the same. Um, when I was born, my skin was pulled so tight that my eyelids and my lips were actually inverted. I had difficulty eating. I was not able to breastfeed, so I was bottle fed. Um, and part of ichthyosis is that our skin grows too quickly. My skin grows about 7 to 10 times faster than a normal person's, which means that that skin builds up and then has nowhere to go. So I have to do a lot of moisturizing. I take a bath every morning before I get up to do anything, because over the night while I've slept, my skin has continued to grow. And so I have to exfoliate that layer off so that I can move easier. When my skin builds up, it becomes tight. It restricts my muscles. For newborns, that can be deadly because that can restrict their ability to breathe. The chest sometimes cannot expand without help. Um, as part of my daily life and routine, um, to get up to go anywhere, I have to be up about 2 hours early before I have to leave because I need to bathe for about 45 minutes to an hour before then applying my ointment of choice. Um, and from there, I can go about the next few hours of my day. But I will end up in the middle of the day. I'll start to get dry, especially depending on what I'm doing. If I'm moving things, if I'm being very physical, I have to reapply more often, because part of my skin growing too fast is that it's not a good barrier. It lets bad things in. So lots of folks with ichthyosis deal with constant and persistent infections. I was fortunate. I didn't face too much of that outside of some surgery related incidents. Um, but that also means that good things escape. So, moisture and vitamins and things that are supposed to stay in your body don't stay in my body, which means I'm constantly dehydrated. I need to drink water all the time. Um, and that also means that I overheat easier. My skin, as you heard a little bit before, I do produce sweat. My sweat glands work, but the problem is that that sweat gets trapped coming up through the layers of skin. And so what actually happens is it forms blisters that can not be very fun. Um, they I tend to get them on the bottoms of my feet and on my hands, which are not very fun for moving around. But with time and attention and bathing, that can alleviate some of those symptoms. Um, and all of this was dropped on a family in the pre internet age. Remember, I was born in 94. So any information that my parents saw was this baby is going to die. When I was still in the NICU, and my mom and dad and my sister were sitting on the living room floor, and they were just kind of holding each other because this was so overwhelming. And was I even going to live? What would my quality of life have looked like? They just didn't know. And so the thing that came out of that little session on the floor was this mantra: one thing at a time, one task at a time, one bath at a time, one doctor's appointment at a time, one surgery at a time. You can't look at the whole mountain at once, it's too overwhelming and you get stuck. But if you take each task as it comes, You break it down, you make it manageable. And so we did. And I grew up. I was not expected to make it to my first birthday. And then I did. And then I made it to my second. And now here I am at 28. And thank you. And along that journey were lots of uh, high joys and frustrating moments. I went to public school. My parents were determined that from an early age, I was going to be normalized as much as possible with my peers in my neighborhood. Um, there were lots of arguments with the district um, about making sure that I got what was entitled to me as a student receiving a public education. Um, I had an individualized education plan or an IEP so that I could sit in the same classroom as the rest of my peers. Sometimes that meant that putting in an air conditioner to make sure that in the late months of the year and the early months of the year, I didn't get overheated sitting in the classroom. That also meant being particularly careful whenever I was at gym class because there's a lot of running around and sometimes that's outside. And for normal people, that's not a problem. For me, so long as I was able to take a break and drink water when I needed to, no issues. Anytime a gym teacher just decided it wasn't their problem, stuff happened. And part of that school experience, in addition to getting the medical accommodations to just be, was also the social element. I look different. And from an early age, my mom was insistent that I be able to tell the story myself. Um, we would go into every classroom from the time I was, oh gosh, kindergarten up through middle school. And I would say, "Hi, I'm Hunter. I have Harlequin ichthyosis, but I also like music and dolls and tag. So, like, I want to be your friend." Just to break down the barriers of the. Uh, I didn't want people making assumptions and spreading rumors or doing silly things. Um, some of that happened anyway, but I do know and believe that going in there early certainly offset what would have been some misconceptions. And this whole social element, I like to call the red elephant in the room because it's the thing that everyone sees, everyone notices, everyone has thoughts about, but no one wants to say. And it's always fun making jokes and watching people decide if they're going to laugh or not. Um, but I say that to say I want to talk about ichthyosis. It's important because it's a part of who I am. It's not all of who I am. I'm also a pastor. I'm also a youth advocate. I'm also a disability advocate. And all of that is because of the routines that I've been able to establish. Um, part of dealing with that red elephant in the room is dealing with well-meaning and oftentimes genuinely helpful strangers who I've been in public and we were, oh gosh, we were somewhere walking on the street coming out from dinner and someone stopped us from across the street, said, "Hold on a second," ran into the drugstore catty corner and came back with their favorite moisturizer and said, "Here, you need to try this." Well meaning, trying to help with what they knew. Um, but sometimes a little sudden in their decision making. Um, but all of that kind of comes with these societal expectations around skin, right? Um, and what I mean by that is we think that if we find the right tool, if we find the right pill, if we find the right cream, then it'll make the thing go away. I've tried a variety of different bathing routines, ointment regimens, medications, and various things. All of that trial and error has been kind of something that the medical system takes great pride in learning about after the fact. Um, and I have participated in a number of studies to kind of track how the skin behaves, to understand both how my skin works and how your skin works. Dermatologists learn a lot about how typical skin operates by looking at how ours doesn't operate. Um, but all of that to say, the routine that I've developed has allowed me to go to college, has allowed me to study abroad. I studied abroad in London for 3 months, has allowed me to uh, go to seminary and be a pastor and I work for the state of Pennsylvania as a disability youth advocate. And all of this is because of these various routines. And even with all these well crafted routines, I still have ichthyosis. I will never not have ichthyosis. All of the stuff that I do, as Chris said, is just for maintenance to be able to go and do. But here's the thing, Aquaphor allows me to do that. These products allow me to get up and move and talk about things that need to be talked about and be present and to meet all of you wonderful people. Aquaphor and Eucerin and all of these products help us do that and do it well. Because of you, friends of mine are able to scale the Grand Canyon and are able to teach yoga and able to. My friend who lives in Hong Kong, she's a rugby referee and a yoga instructor. Um, and it allows us to perform. I have friends that are ballerinas and that are singers and that are models. Um, People with ichthyosis are finding their niche, and part of that is being able to be seen and represented. Growing up, I never saw anyone else outside of ichthyosis related events who looked like me or who moved through the world like I did. And so it was always kind of alienating to see beauty commercials or makeup commercials or those sorts of things where um, they, they complain about their dry skin and then, put on whatever cream they're advertising, and then, oh look, the irritation's gone. I wish it worked that way. It partially does, but I'm still red, and I will be. Um, and I think that representation is important. I think that honesty is important because it gives room to breathe for people like us to feel like we have space to be, and creates that expectation that this kind of beauty is wanted, is normal, and is accepted. The beautiful thing about this community that is first is that I've met people from all over the world with all different colors and creeds and shades, and none of them match what's on the store. But that's okay. We'll get there. And that beauty and that range of skin is who you guys get to help with all of the stuff that you do. And all of the people at first connect all of us into this family of skin. So thank you for being part of our skin family.
Thank you so much, Hunter. We really appreciate you coming here and sharing your story. And it is heartwarming. Like for me, it's very heartwarming to know I'm working on Aquaphor and that Aquaphor is part of your daily routine. Um, what I do makes a difference. And I'm hoping that's what all of you really walk away with today is, we get bogged down in slide preparations, in reporting and presenting. But at the end of the day, there are real life people behind using our products. And, while Hunter might be an extreme case due to a rare genetic skin disease, no matter whether it's a mild skin condition for dry skin or ichthyosis, what we're doing really makes a difference. So feel good about what we do and let it be the reason to come to this office and wake up every morning. So thank you, Hunter. We also really appreciate you. Um, appreciate listening to you and your story. Does anyone have any questions so far, or this can be interactive as well? Okay, then we're going to take a yes. Let me pass this to you. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, I mean, this seems to be from a psychological perspective incredibly challenging, and I can't imagine. What is what have you found to be the most helpful for you from a mental health perspective?
That's a great question. And you're absolutely right. Mental health for folks with ichthyosis is certainly a challenge. Um, and I think everyone kind of has to find their own path through that. For me, I've found having a community like First is the first and foremost important part. Recognizing that you're not alone, and being able to move through the steps with folks who get it. Also, I think I am diagnosed with depression, and I see a therapist, and I take medication, and that helps me to move about through my life. Um, I found that different people cope different ways to varying levels. Um, a lot of folks in developing places use the internet as a means to connect to that community, and thus, my friend in Hong Kong, for instance, I connect with her online. Um, and Also meditation and mindfulness. I am very much a spiritual person. I spend lots of time with music and prayer and scripture, and that helps me kind of center myself and remind myself that I am loved, I am worthy, that all of this stuff fades away in the span of time. Um, and I try to help other folks through that same process.
I mean, we talk also about that social inclusivity, and besides the donations that helps first support people in their organization, there's also places on the First website that if you also want to get involved, especially in volunteering, there's
That reminds me,
yes.
um, Camp Discovery, which is funded by the American Academy of Dermatology, is a network of skin camps for kids with various conditions. I attended these camps from the time I was 8 years old to the time I was, oh God, 16. Um, and The opportunity to gather in a place with other people and just be a kid. These camps are fully handicap accessible. They are also staffed by medical professionals. One such previous counselor is one of our guests this morning. And The opportunity for not just affected folks to gather, but for medical professionals to interact with us outside of the medical setting. I think that's really important to get to know us as people, not just as patients. Um, and The fact that these are safe places where parents can send them and it's entirely free. They pay for your flight if you have to travel. We have had international campers at these camps. Um, and to get together and spend time a week to 2 weeks. Um, and these camps are all over the country. Volunteers are always welcome. If you're interested, we would love to have you at camp with us.
Actually one here in Connecticut in Hebron. So the week of that camp was July, but we'll make sure that we get it out on for everyone to know when it is. And if you wish to volunteer, I'm very happy to help organize a group that we can do this event together. But going to these camps, setting up the sporting events, setting up the arts and crafts, sitting down and interacting, the social empowerment that this gives these children and these families that they're just like us. I mean, everybody loves to do arts and crafts, and Everybody loves to get out there and do archery or get out in the paddle boat.
Yep.
And so
Go fishing or
fishing. Yeah.
play in the rec room or go swimming or climb the climbing wall. I have seen kids in wheelchairs climb the climbing wall in these places. Amazing things happen there. Yeah.
So August 6th through the 11th is the one in Hebron, and then the next closest one will be a location in Pennsylvania. So we'll get that out for everybody. But your message about the social inclusion, I mean, take this back with you, think about your children in your schools, and this inclusion message isn't just for people with ichthyosis, but we think about everybody and how important it is that we generate this feeling of inclusivity, leaving no one behind, and making sure that everybody is treated the
Janet, before we break for coffee, you're so good at the breaks. Hunter, thank you so much. I mean, it really is inspiring to hear you speak. Um, so I'm not sure if we get more out of this relationship or you do. So, I think Janet makes a really good point that we do get bogged down. We have a beautiful office, but we spend a lot of time behind our desks. And it's just so important that we kind of get out into the world to see the impact of our products. So, in that spirit, can you just kind of explain a little more about Aquaphor so we can continue to be inspired, all of us in some way, shape, or form, really support this brand? And it's just helpful in those PowerPoint bogged down days to see the bigger purpose. So if you can just tell us like why Aquaphor, how you use it, and just how it helps kind of, with the skin, that would be really awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you. So the way that for me, the way that my skin works, if you think of your skin like a brick wall, right? Your skin cells are the bricks, and your mortar is a fatty acid lipid substance that kind of binds it together, right? Well, genetically, I have a hard time making the lipids. I can't make the mortar that binds my skin together. So that's how things get out and things get in. It's a faulty barrier, right? Well, what Aquaphor does is after I've had a bath, so my skin has sucked in all that moisture, that Aquaphor helps to seal that barrier so that for a few hours, my skin is more flexible than it would be otherwise. It does require reapplication because of how fast the skin turnover is. And typically, I do apply it sometimes without also adding water, but adding water adds a longer time of mobility than without it. Um, it also helps to soften those layers. If I have some thicker buildup that is uncomfortable, or if I have an area that's raw because something has peeled and maybe it wasn't ready, or I get those sweat blisters and that skin underneath can be raw. Aquaphor helps to build a protective layer around those so that those can heal. And it also helps to keep that barrier against things, infection, and other disturbances. Um, it is the barrier piece that my skin doesn't make, and so it allows me to then go and do things without being as uncomfortable, itchy, and dry. Um, Typically, if I'm dry and flaky, I end up everywhere. Um, Sometimes I'll be at home and I'll take, it'll be a long day coming home and getting into my comfy clothes and take my shirt off and I go, oh, it's snowing. So Aquaphor helps to lower those incidents and to make it easier for me to relax and be and do all the things I want to do. Yes.
Thank you.
Good question. The question was, how long does the first application take to need to be reapplied? And the answer is it varies. My skin responds to environmental temperature changes, pressure changes, humidity changes, all of that stuff. And so on more humid days, I might not need to reapply until, if I do it in the morning, maybe lunchtime, maybe dinner time in the summer. But in the winter, constantly. Um, uh, Whenever it's drier, especially pressurized air, like even like, forced air conditioning is really hard on me also. Um, because it sounds weird, but my temperature can swing wildly in both directions. So I can overheat, but I can also get too cold. And sometimes putting on Aquaphor when I'm cold actually helps warm me up. Because again, it's restoring that barrier that my body doesn't create. Yeah. What part of my body has been affected the most? Um, Thank you. I spent a good amount of time in the tub this morning to make sure I was. um, but I think for me it is my feet. Um, my skin is very tight around my feet, to the point where I can't actually flatten my heel to the ground on my left foot. um, and so I have a hard time. Mobility, long periods of standing tend to be difficult. Long periods of walking tend to be difficult. Um, Also, I would say probably my eyelids are the second most crucial area for me. My eyelids do not close around the globe of my eye. So that means I do have corneal scarring that impacts my vision. I actually don't drive because of that. And so there are kind of secondary and tertiary effects of living with ichthyosis um, that in some ways, Aquaphor not just deals with the skin, but also can kind of mediate those tertiary symptoms also.
Hunter, you've shared with us, you went through our Strengths Finder
Yes.
program. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with that and how learning about your strengths has helped you in the, entry into the work world, workforce?
Absolutely. So I was part of the first Strength Finders course in partnership with Beiersdorf and Aquaphor and Eucerin, and it was really kind of cool because some of the folks that I participated with I already knew, um, and learned things about, as well as learning about myself. But I also got to meet other folks who were a little younger than me, who I hadn't met at the conferences yet. This was a virtual event while we were still kind of in the middle of COVID. But because it was virtual, we got to have people from all over the country participate. And so I got to meet folks that I hadn't met yet. And then I got to meet in person later. It was great. And at the same time, getting to kind of sit with, oh, these are my strengths. And I learn things about my nature I didn't necessarily have a full grasp of before. I'm more intellectual than I thought. I'm a nerd. Um, I am very much a nerd. Um, but I didn't really understand how much that informed my work ethic and how much, how specific and communicative I am because I have to know things. And I assume other people also need to know things. Um, I also, it was really affirming. I was coming into, oh gosh, I was in the last leg of my seminary career as a student at the time, and it really helped to solidify my understanding of my gifts and call to ministry, as well as the talents that led to where I work for the state of Pennsylvania currently. Using all of those, experiential skills about living with ichthyosis, as well as understanding that I'm good at communicating and I'm good at digesting information and all of that stuff, to then be able to take that and use that to teach other young people with disabilities how to advocate for themselves and how to make their own decisions, how to participate in their transition process in life after high school. And being able to then turn around also and to guide their parents to know what a process can look like and all of that kind of stuff. And that all of that was the foundation for those skills was solidified in the Strength Finders course.
Glad you were able to participate with us. We learned a lot about you and the others that participated, and we all got a chance to share how our experiences as well have helped us in the workforce. Is there anything about your experience so far in the workforce that you would say, um, we can all support you with? Like, is there something that, you know, obviously accommodations, you advocate for yourself, but what advice might you have for, others affected with ichthyosis in the workforce?
I think the biggest piece of advice, I guess, for someone else would just be to find your people and stay close to them because they are few and far between. And also, I think for me right now, it's kind of understanding finance. I don't have a great grasp on uh, a lot of things. I'm trying to find a way. I do receive disability benefits, which puts me in a unique financial situation because I am disabled and I need that additional support. That means that I have a limit on how much money and capital I'm able to accrue. So if I want to save money and set aside or be able to, have a future for myself, I need to find creative ways to do that. I actually just set up. It's called an Able Trust. Um, at least in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't know how it works in other states. It might be different. But this allows me to save money in a way that doesn't affect my benefits. But other elements of finance and credit and investing, and I have no idea. Um, so, and I think in general, that's something that young people just really, they don't teach it in school, and a lot of underserved folks don't have the opportunity to get that kind of education. Um, I know that for some folks, I think access to dermatologists that have advice to give. There are so many dermatologists who have never seen a patient with ichthyosis before, um, not even in a book. Or if it was in a book, it was back in medical school 10 years ago. And like it was an addendum, like so really, educating everyone else is one of the things that would help us to be able to tackle the skin thing, so that then we can tackle the big thing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Any other questions
I don't bite, I promise.
for, for Hunter or for Chris from First? No? Oh, one more. Okay.
So, Hunter, you mentioned education, which is kind of our goal too, to help educate everybody on ichthyosis. How do you recommend is the best way that everybody in this room could go out and raise awareness of ichthyosis?
That's a great question. Um, for me, it's kind of easy. I just get to be and people see it. But I think what really helps is keeping in mind that, and preparing for the fact that that ichthyosis is part of the skin spectrum, right? And so when we talk about, all sorts of different, how skin affects, folks in puberty and dealing with, pimples um, and those little irritations, that those have, social consequences too. And there are bigger versions of those same things. And so if any time we're thinking about and talking about the needs of one particular group, we think of the wider kind of ripple effect as we get down the spectrum of skin, how it affects those groups also, and kind of factoring that into how we do other things and how we talk about it, how we teach about it, what our literature says. Um, I think using the term ichthyosis and kind of, but like, I'll be honest, I don't like the word ichthyosis because I don't like being associated with fish. I got that enough in middle school. Um, but it is the term we have. But I think also the importance of highlighting that these are people with experiencing the world in a different way. People who have hopes and dreams and desires and goals and all of these things, and who also have a little bit extra to think about. And so what helps is when there are other folks that think about it almost for us. Not doing for, but like, I know that so and so has a difficulty with heat. Why don't you sit out of the sun? Or, here, have some water, even if I don't ask for it. Thank you. Um, and so, having that little bit of extra support. Um, and then when going out to other people, being open and honest about the red elephant in the room, right?